So Friday, June 11th, I am going to be a guest on Jebro's podcast over on Jebro Unity on twitch.tv. And he's a ArenaNet partner, does shoutcasting for them, is an ESO stream partner. I watched him play some Guild Wars 1. I was lurking in his stream. I didn't even say hi. I lurked in his stream watching Guild Wars 1 this weekend. And he invited me to be on his podcast this week, around the main topic of being new to Guild Wars 2 as a streamer, thinking about other MMORPGs as I played in the past, new player experiences, and kind of what I've enjoyed, etc., wherever that goes from here. And what I've learned is filming by myself, where I can just vent, and all of these are one take. So when I talk slow, or I talk fast, or I seem tired, or I seem happy or sad, some of it's the topic I'm talking about, some of it's not. I know with the Bellular videos, there's a significant change in tone in the way I react, and how long-winded I am for each video. And some of those are filmed like in the same afternoon, and it just depends on how each one hits me. They're reactions, they're raw, they're not all going to be my best take. If I sleep on it, I may feel that I should have phrased things a little differently, I should have done a better job reacting to something. And so I wanted to get a chance to kind of get some of my thoughts down going into that podcast. It'll be at 1:30 CST, so my stream will end 30 minutes early, and we'll raid him. And I wanted to get some of these thoughts out because as I film with Brian over on Work to Game, we film collaborative stuff and I film raw stuff, and you say different things. Not because one is true and one is not, but because you only have kind of one shot at getting it all down on paper. And as we talk about content creation, I've been doing this for 6 months, full time. I've been doing this part time for almost 5 years. It's been a journey, and when you talk about playing a game as a new player, I think there's something very different about a game where I share my new player experience as part of my content creation, and I just pick up a game. I have picked up several games over the last 5 years, and I have returned to games I've played before several times over the last 5 years. And I don't necessarily talk about them. I've played several Call of Duties. I've played hundreds of hours of Halo. I've played Minecraft, Factorio, several sim-type games because I like the transporter-type sims. I also like the more Cities XL-type sims. I have messed around in other RPGs. I've played a lot of stuff over the last 5 years, D&D, and I don't necessarily put content out on that. And now, I actively sometimes pick up a game with the intention of not playing content in it, because the way you play a game when you're generating content for it and the way you play a game when you're not generating content for it are inherently different. It's a very 1984, if you're being watched, it changes things. And it does. It changes things. Knowing that you're generating content, you're kind of storing these notes in the back of your head. That was an important moment. I need to be sure I go back to that. I need to write that down. I need to clip that. Where's a good stopping point for today? Should I do this live? Should I do this off stream? Should I be recording? Should I stop and talk about my thoughts? Is this the right time for the initial impressions? What are the other things I'm missing? What is the broader spectrum of what people might be missing? Because I don't just want to represent my viewpoint. I want to catch a wider viewpoint. What other games does this compare to? Is this good or bad? Would I recommend this? All of these questions flow through your head. And when you can just consume a game for game totally in your own home, and it's private, and you're not even going to tell other people about it, all of that's gone. It's just you. It's just you. And a multiplayer game is different than a single player game. And so I think there's something to that. And I assume what he's going to be talking about is the first phrase here is being new to Guild Wars 2 as a streamer. And I will tell you that Guild Wars 2 on stream and off stream are two different things. Off stream, I have had a mix of positive and negative experiences. On stream, I've never had a negative one. It's all positive. Because even if I run into something in the game where something bad happened, chat is there to support me. And so if I'm running into any issues, somebody just shows up that's watching stream. Sometimes you get handed gifts. Sometimes somebody comes and helps you down a big monster. Sometimes people offer advice. Sometimes people are just there to support you when you don't want spoilers going through something like a jump puzzle. As I solved kind of getting the princess and doing all of that stuff on my own, there's something fun about doing it on stream that's different than doing it offline, where I would have probably broken that into a couple of sessions. And so getting to do these, bigger challenges, the not so secret jump puzzle, I probably wouldn't have done that in one sitting. And I think that having cleared some of these things, the first thing is it's humbling. Jumping from Final Fantasy, where yes, people regularly correct minor things I get wrong, or even major things I get wrong about a game that I have thousands of hours in. Same with World of Warcraft. Hey, you didn't phrase that right. Hey, you said that wrong. That's going to happen. But like, I know whether or not their correction is true, because the moment they say it, I go, oh yeah, that is right. Or I'm like, no, I don't think that is. And so there's a knowledge base there where they're correcting 1% of the words out of my mouth. And I know the areas that, like, I know what I'm talking about, and I know the areas where, like, I'm pretty sure what I'm talking about. And so when they go to issue a correction, I'm like, yeah, that sounded right, but, like, now that you say it, that sounds way better. And with Guild Wars, like, that's just not the case. As I talk about Guild Wars, like, I'm trying to keep up, and I'm watching content, and I'm doing this, but I am very much on the learning end. We're talking hundreds of hours, not thousands, and it's just going to take time. Like, I'm going through my first Living season right now, as they release the chapters slowly to Living Season 2, and that's a new experience. I'm going through, I'm ranked 15 in PvP, so I can't go into ranked matches yet. That's a different experience. World v World, got my Warclaw. That's a totally different process than how you unlock fractals and what agony resistance is. And so as I try to learn about this game, I would say that being new as a streamer is really shaky ground. There are people who do it well, and it seems to be up their alley. The first person that comes to mind is Xandri. Xandri came over from WoW to Final Fantasy XIV, did very, very well at being new and being a sprout and leveling up everything and getting to know the game. And the moment she started to kind of plateau, she dipped her toe into Guild Wars and immediately fell in wholeheartedly. And she's powering through that grind, and she's learning all of that. And like, her raw new person reactions, her ability to learn on stream and share that experience appears to be her gift. And so at some point, like, I wonder, when she gets to Guild Wars, will it make sense to share Guild Wars with PSO2 New Genesis or with New World or with something else, so that she can stay in the thing that I think she really rocks it at, being new in MMOs. I like to compare things, and to compare things, you have to know at least a little about what they're both doing. You don't have to be the PhD perfect expert in both, the founding member, the world firster, but you've got to have enough that you know where most of the areas that they have in common are, and where those differences start to lie. Where does it start to feel like, this isn't quite the same thing? And so that's somewhere in that, like, you've probably crossed 40 or 50% of the population in knowledge base. You don't have to be in the top 1%, that 99th percentile or whatever, but you've got to have kind of crossed into that blue or green parse as far as knowledge base, and it's got to be pretty diverse across the game, because any one system on its own is just a silo. While a PvP player may feel that they only need to know about PvP, when you ask questions about why the devs are rolling out an event in a certain way, or why PvP gets implemented at certain times or gets left behind during certain windows, it's important to know what the whole picture of the game is doing, because to the devs, it's one part in a much larger picture. And so when you say, hey, I really didn't like role quests over job quests in Final Fantasy XIV this last expansion. Okay, well, let's look at what led to that decision. Let's look at the fact that they gave up story with the 24-man to Nier raids, which means that the stories they would have told through the 24-man as a canvas had to be told somewhere else. And so having these deeper, more grand, big picture stories that were not so individually tied to a job, and then breaking that out into a role, which made sense within the context of Shadowbringers because of some things going on in Shadowbringers, there's a narrative element there that RollQuest did a great job of trying to solve. Whether or not you think the execution is perfect is up for debate. That becomes opinion pretty quickly. But it is logical why they made the move from JobQuest to RollQuest. It took a ton of labor out of an area where they said things were too labor intensive, and it gave them an opportunity to tell a story that they had given up by giving the 24-mans over to being a crossover event with Nier Automata. So it's those big picture things there, I think, are really important. And with Guild Wars, I just don't have them. As we go into the summer, as we build towards End of Dragons, as we talk about things like Fractal Week and World v World Week and these living seasons being released, I I've got a lot to learn. I've got a lot to learn. And do I have critiques on how I wish things were differently? Yes. But most of them actually fall in a very similar light as Final Fantasy, where it's like, hey, you guys are doing this thing well, and I think you could have more success if you just got out of your own way. I think it's critiques of very much like, I want you to do more of this thing, and I feel like you're the one holding yourself back. It's not the industry. It's not, something you can't help. This is something where you guys had momentum and you actively got in your own way. And if you would just step out of the way, I think you would have immense success being more of yourself. Guild Wars has an immense personality within a genre that's relatively well defined on what the features are that make an MMORPG an MMORPG. And it hits all the boxes, but it just hits it in a weird way. It hits them in a way that feels a lot different than Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft. And I think its sister game's probably ESO. I played that on launch. I'd love to go back and have some more context to a statement like that. But I think that if I had to pair them, Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft feel very similar to me, in that they're both coming at it from the same angle. Their execution is different. Their priority list is different. But they both interpreted the writing prompt the same way. Here's what we'd like you to make an MMO about. And they both kind of went at it from the same angle. They just started at different points and had different skill sets. And so the execution turned out very differently. Guild Wars and ESO feel like they kind of took the prompt and they like dropped it and shook it a little. And they were like, oh, I guess I'll just put these in whatever order I want. Is it important how I do them? And like, the proctor's like, I can't tell you the answer to the test. You just got to take the test. And they're like, okay. And they just kind of charge forward. They do a lot of things really clever. They do a lot of things really, really clever. But at the same time, some of those, very, very often a game's strongest strength is also its biggest weakness. And I think that is absolutely true in Guild Wars. It's absolutely true in 14. It's absolutely true in World of Warcraft. And I think that when you talk about games' strongest 2 or 3 qualities, it is very, if you had to list the strongest 5 qualities about a game, I bet the top 3 are also present in the weakest 5 categories about a game. And I think my initial impressions of Guild Wars are like, I can see why people that have been playing a long time are frustrated. I can see why people who've been playing a long time get burned out. The game lends itself to that. It lends itself to burnout. It lends itself to taking breaks. It needs a Yoshi P to say, it's okay to take breaks. This is lateral progression. You literally cannot fall behind. The problem with that is the way they do it doesn't make them any money. And so then when people are like, I wish they'd come out with content more often, I have to wonder how the finances on that side of things go, because I just don't see how they're getting the funding. WoW and 14 both get accused of milking their community for money, but the advantage of that is they can both put on one heck of a show. And so when they are at their best, nobody does better trailers, nobody does better content rollouts, nobody can drop more content on day one into a sea of already large content, and that comes from money. That's what does that. That's what buys that level of dev resources. The fact that in a recent interview, Yoshi P says he has people on staff whose whole job is to come to him and help him understand what else is going on in the MMO space for the games that he himself doesn't get a chance to go hands-on with. The fact that World of Warcraft has had, they have a Mythic Plus Invitational and a PvP Invitational, and they have enough raid content that it supports a world first community that's not run by them and they don't need to take control of. I think there is an immense amount of money here, even on their weakest day. And Guild Wars is much closer to a streamer. They're crowdfunded. They're never asking for it. It's there and they say thank you when you donate it, but it's a donation. There's no subscription. The games are cheap. It's buy to play, and they go on sale. And I think for me, somebody who doesn't really dump a lot of money into cosmetic markets, I'm really concerned that if left to my own devices, if I wasn't a content creator where I have a chance to try to give this back in the form of game codes in some upcoming events in August and things like that, and share the game and things, and so on, really the only way I've given back to this game is that I've asked 7 or 8 friends to hop in, and several of them have. And so off of me, they've sold 5 or 6 copies of sets of expansions for people that have already paid the $30 to hop over. And that's it. Like, that's all the friends that I really have that I want to convert. There might be one or two ever long term. And so after 5 or 7 years, that money's long gone. And I just don't see how it's sustainable. As a content creator, that's the word that I look at, sustainable. When I made the move to full time, I left a career that paid fine. I left a career where I have the ability to go out and get jobs that cover what my wife and I need me to make. And I think that it's, is this sustainable? And that includes words like 401k and IRA and health benefits. That includes words where, like, I know one day I want to retire, and this job can't just be a time in my life where I just ignored that. That includes words like car payment and mortgage. And so when people assume that content creators do it for the money, as much as you show up to your job for the money. And I hope that many of you have jobs, at least for some portion of your life, where you love the job, you're proud of the work you do, but you wouldn't go if they stopped paying you. And it's not that I wouldn't keep making content, it's that it would go back to being a hobby. And I wouldn't have the ability to make the amount and consume the amount necessary to give me this broad of a view. It's that I wouldn't have time to put out, I'm in 14 YouTube videos a week or more while maintaining a 30 to 35 hour a week stream schedule. That's not doable if I'm working a 40 or 50 hour a week job for somebody. It's just not. And so there's types of content I get to make that people that only have 2 or 3 hours a week to game and then 2 or 3 hours a week to make content, I can get to stuff they can't. And so I can have an opinion for players that, what happens if I level all my relics, and how does that compare to World of Warcraft's system, and what's going on in Guild Wars right now, and should I try PSO2 as a Final Fantasy player? I can go test all those things. Full-time content creation is what allows for that, but as I look out to videos as a streamer, I don't know if this is what he'll get into, because a lot of people don't feel comfortable talking about the money side of things. You do have to ask that question. Like, I've got 10 videos I want to make on 3 games. And most of them are in this area where I know there's people who want that content. They're asking for that content. They'll watch it, and the ad revenue will pay for the time it takes me to play the game, the amount to have that knowledge, and edit and produce the videos that actually generate the revenue. And some of these others don't. They're just interested in a game and making a video that will fail. A lot of times we get accused of only doing one type of content, but really what it is like on this channel, I've been posting every other day as reactions right now because it's a fun time to react. But there's people saying you're only reacting. I'm not only reacting. I'm reacting exactly 50% of the time on half of my channel. Like there's Work to Game is a totally separate channel where I collaborate with Brian, and it's not every other day of reaction content. A lot of times it's just us chatting about things. My stream is not just me reacting to video content. We're going to do reactions for the second half of stream on Thursday, 1 day a week. So across my total content schedule, reaction content is a very small percentage. But if that's all you're seeing, because those videos are doing incredibly well compared to the video I'm making right now, then yeah, it's very easy to feel like from your perception that I'm not making anything else and I'm only making those for the money. Now, the nice thing is that when one video does better than expected, there was a video about making Gil that in Final Fantasy did incredibly well, that had like 5 or 6 times the viewer base of my entire subscription base. That told me 2 things. First of all, it told me, oh my gosh, I have got to make more videos like this, and I've got to make better videos about this topic, because there were a lot of valid criticisms about the way I produced that content, because I really just was putting my thoughts out there. I didn't expect that level of response. But that means that video also generated 5 or 6 times the revenue that I expected. And what that does is it takes that money and it helps me pay for the time that I'm going to have to take out of my day to make better guild guides, that I'm going to take out of my day to go make the next thing. And so when one video does well, that allows us to work on more passion projects. It's a total monthly income. And so when we have videos that do well, you see these passion projects. I'm working on the A Realm Revoiced series in the background, and I have a plan for how that's going to come back out in hopefully a more meaningful way, and we'll talk about that in the next 60 days. And I think that as I look forward to that kind of launch of some new stuff that's really a passion project, what pays for the passion projects are the things that perform. And it feels really good when the things that perform are fun, so that I can use that money to justify making things that are also fun that won't make money. And then I just live off the average of the two. So, the topic being about Guild Wars 2 as a streamer, the topic being about thinking about other MMORPGs in comparison, the word that I caught onto here, the word that I latched onto here was as a streamer. Why make the content you make? Why make Guild Wars 2 content? And I think the answer is it's fun to diversify for me. It's fun to try something different. And as I try different games based on the response to that, if I like 2 or 3 games equally, the game that does the best is the one that makes the most sense to carry forward, because it's most fun to be in the game that's getting fun chat interaction and is getting support and is getting interest. And in addition to those things is also justifying the time, because yes, at least from like 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, I consider that time work. And I consider that time a job where I need to make an amount of money that justifies this for a living. And if it isn't going to do that, the fact that I've been playing Guild Wars on the weekends and at nights by my, with my brothers, that time's separate. That time's free. And that's just the time I would normally play games. And so you get a lot more hours if something happens to also be something that supports you monetarily. And I think full-time content creators have to balance those two sides, right? Am I playing this game as a business decision? Am I playing it for fun? Totally on my own time. And if you can find a way where both are described as fun, but one is for fun as like your own personal time and the other is for fun and it's just a really cool thing you're getting to do that happens to pay the bills, that's really neat. If any of you have ever been at a job, I got to go take part in like some golf tournaments at a job that I was at one time. That was part of my job. What a cool day. What a cool day to be out there hanging out with people, have a beer or two, hitting some golf balls. I'm not very good at it. Getting to meet people, shaking hands, laughing, having a good time. And the reason I was there is because I had a company name on my polo and I was an extension of that company. So when the conversation extended to our space, because we were putting on the tournament, I could tell them a little bit about what we bring to the space. And I think there can be times that it's both. And in content creation, much like people that play music for a living or people that work in radio for a living or on a TV show or on the news or are writers, anything where their work is often described as an art, that line gets blurry really fast. And so I think that his topic about Guild Wars, I'm sure we'll focus more on the game itself. But this is kind of where I took it, is being new to Guild Wars as a streamer it's a shaky experience. It's shaky on the gameplay, which is fun. It's fun to be new in something. And it's shaky as a content creator because you don't have that knowledge base of like, Brian and I can predict exactly what live letter coverage is going to do stats wise, to the point where we can sign up a sponsorship with something like Audible or Manscaped and we know what it's going to cover. We know it's going to hit the view count that they asked for because it's consistent. We've covered them a bunch of times. And we can, in between, we can say, hey, I just think this would be really fun to talk about. And then we film it and we know it's not going to perform, but we put it out anyway. And we can balance that, and the total monthly view total makes it something where I can do this full time. Brian can use it to pay for diapers for his 5 children, and we can just continue to do the things we're passionate about for the amount of time that we can spare in a week. So hopefully that kind of sheds some light on what that is. I think his podcast will be something very different than this. And this is probably the things that I'll wish I could touch on that I couldn't get out. So definitely feel free to come over at 1:30 p.m. CST on Friday to Jebro Unity on twitch.tv. And it should start about 30 minutes after that. There's some pre-show. And he said it could run 2 hours. So we'll see. That's going to be a long Friday for me. So if I look like I'm fading, come over and give me a poke. I will see you guys around. This was just a chance to incredibly focus on the second half of that phrase, gaming, kinda.